Welcome to the Roundtable, a new series that kicks off today for CIO Lifeline, bringing individuals into the live studio to continue the conversation. Today we have Brian Marshall and Brad Wiertel from Fallacy Network. They are a managed service provider based out of Erie, PA, but they also offer fiber, they offer TV, they offer voice. We'll get into some of that, but the focus for today's session is internet. You're paying for a service. Are you truly getting the speed you're paying for? What's the difference between residential and commercial internet? What are some of the frustrations you go through as a consumer, as a provider, how it gets managed, and what does the future hold? Don't go anywhere. It's a great conversation coming up. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks. So let's get the story of VNET. Its origins. I remember you under a different name in the early years in Softtech, for example. But yeah, let's learn a little bit more about what you do and the services you offer.
I'm Brad Wiertel, Chief Operating Officer. Been with the company 26 years, which is a long time in this business. Started with the company that you remember, Softtech. Joel Duderman, our CEO, president, and founder, started Softtech out of his home on West 8th Street and grew that from a PC, constructing, building PCs, to repairing PCs, to then working on networks, and then evolving that into the internet company that a lot of people here in the region know as VelocityNet. Started with dial-up, and I'm sure, Tony, you had dial-up as well.
I did.
Grew that company to 15 to 20,000 subscribers in the heyday, and then pivoted to DSL technology, which we still have a number of people, I think, in the region still using that with Verizon, and then getting into fiber optics. We acquired a fiber optic company here in the Erie area that connected the whole Erie school district back in 2010, and expanding that from the 70 or so buildings to well over 1,000 on-net buildings in Erie now. Our network is expanded for businesses, and we're the provider for fiber optics for the majority of the school districts, and then expanding into residential fiber.
Are you outside of PA, or are you just, when it comes to your fiber offerings, or just
Erie County right now? Where our concentration, we have about 25,000 homes that we pass right now. A lot of that is concentrated in Erie, Mill Creek, Harbor Creek, Fairview.
And this is your fiber. You're not leasing it from, or whatever the right structure is, from Verizon or AT&T. I mean, this is your fiber.
Yes, it's constructed. It's our fiber. We've been hauling in fiber into our garages and warehouses since before COVID. It's mind-boggling that we could be approaching over 30,000 homes in this area that we're going to service with fiber optic internet. And then we've compounded that with increased speeds in all of our new areas, and being able to provide much higher speeds than we were before. And then Wi-Fi, managed wireless technology that we can have a really good industrial, commercial grade product in your home.
I have a lot of curiosity about the speeds and how you approach speeds, and some of the differences between business offerings and consumer. We'll get to that. But I'm just curious, you mentioned you're starting in dial-up and ISDN. Do you still have clients?
We actually have a handful of dial-up customers. They'll be finding out very shortly here in the new year that we're not going to be servicing them anymore. We're going to break the bad news to them that it's not going to be working anymore. It's actually costing us more money to service and maintain.
That was my next question.
To turn it off.
Business I come from, some of the older facilities had your alarm lines. Mm-hmm. They were old analog lines. Now, the Big Bell approach was just pricing you out of it.
Yep.
Like every month, the price doubled. So imagine that. Talk about motivation to get off of that. Mm-hmm. Now, I think there's better ways to do it, right? But they were message heard.
Yep.
So
the codes are still written to require a landline connection, but now the fire in the building codes are starting to change that you can use cellular as a substitute because you can't get copper anymore.
Yeah.
They're not really selling any new services. They just want you to, kind of go to the wireless.
Well, that's good that there is some common sense that goes into codes and regs. It's not always, yeah. All right, so there's your fiber footprint. We'll come back to that, but also your MSP offerings. Maybe talk a little bit about that program and what your reach is there.
Sure. And under our MSP footprint, we're called VNET. Part of the VNET group of companies here, all owned by Joel Duderman. Brian, who's been with us since 2007. I got that right? I think so. A long time. Heads up our MSP offering as a virtual CIO. And we come in to businesses, tri-state area and beyond, and provide either one hand to shake solution where we're managing the IT infrastructure, the computers, the PCs that are on the desktops, laptops, mobile clients, your remote workers, and phone systems and voice over IP, which is very popular now, to security, which is, Brian's thing that keeps him up at night, myself, is securing these networks as they're getting more intricate and connecting to so many different things. I know we were talking about before coming on here is like Internet of Things, IoT, all these different devices that are coming into our homes, while they're also coming into our businesses as well. So being able to secure those, penetration testing, doing compliance, that's all coming down the line, compliance, and being able to make sure that you can obtain military and government contracts, even as small businesses. Our region here, if in Erie, you don't think about it, but there's a lot of small businesses that do work for the government. And with all of the new regulations that come into place, it puts an undue burden on those businesses to be able to be compliant. In
future episodes, we're going to focus specifically on your Titan agreement, which I think is just a unique offering. All the businesses I've worked with globally, I've yet to see a product so fine-tuned and comprehensive, and I'll say generous, than VNET's Titan agreement. Also, you mentioned security, AI. I mean, we could sit here for 10 hours, right?
Yeah, we'd miss Christmas.
We would. So let's, but no, it's good to know because, again, there's lots of great content to share. Let's get back to fiber. So you gave us a residential footprint, but Brian, maybe on the business side, because you don't get involved much on the consumer side of things.
I do not.
Okay. You're probably grateful for that.
Yes. I'm a little sad because I don't have it at my house.
Ooh.
We're here at your house. You have it.
You propped him up as a key employee.
It's coming.
Okay.
I'm excited for the expansion.
We're on record here.
I'm excited for the expansion.
Yeah. All right. But so on the business side, so VNET Fiber has business class offerings also, right? But, companies you work with have locations, in my case, globally. So how do you approach an offering or a proposal for businesses? Not just the MSP, I get that too,
Sure.
But like internet.
I think when you're looking for how am I going to size it right for this company, you've got to look at what kind of endpoints they have, what kind of uptime do they need, what exactly are we doing? Having fiber is important, synchronous, right? Probably most of the people tuning into this understand that the difference between your cable modem and your fiber are, your fiber is the same speed up and down. Okay. Typically with a cable solution, you're in a position where, there's only so much bandwidth to go around. So we err on the side of, well, let's make it good for surfing, but maybe not so good for offloading of data. Think, well, that's not a big deal. I don't do a lot of offloading of data. Well, until my backups have to get out.
Yeah.
So people don't often think about that. So how much of my data lives on-prem that needs to be offsite, et cetera? Reliability comes into play, right? Fiber is obviously very reliable. But when I'm looking to size it, I'm looking at how many endpoints do we have? What kind of bandwidth are we going to be using? What kind of data are we going to be moving? The internet is pretty well tuned as far as surfing goes, right? I need to go ask ChatGPT to give me some information and bring it back. That you can do it on your phone I don't need a lot of bandwidth to make that happen. Okay. But I've got intricate drawings or lots of data that I have here locally that needs to get backed up. I'm only one mouse click away from a big cyber event. And if my backups are 1 or 2 or 10 or 24 or 48 or 72 hours behind, that bandwidth could make a really big difference. So if I need to be able to get all of my stuff off every hour, I'm going to need a lot more bandwidth than if I am good enough just sending it up once a day or once a week or, heaven forbid, once a month.
What is the difference between, so as a consumer, I have gig up and down from VNET Fiber. And I'll do a speed test sometimes, and it doesn't seem like it's gig. Now, we'll get into this, but then a business class gig connection feels like true gig up and down. Am I thinking about this right? Or are you just f***ing us? I'm kidding. No. But no, what's the difference between the consumer grade internet, if I'm wording it right, versus business class?
Well, from the consumer grade, we go through a different type of connectivity. It's called either GPON or XGS-PON, which is 10 gig PON. It's the newest technology that we're deploying in the majority of our areas, where we'll put a splitter on there. And because there's so many homes in a dense area now, like where you're at, there's maybe less homes per mile, but in a more denser area, we basically take that fiber optic signal and split it. From a commercial standpoint, the majority of the businesses that get a dedicated fiber connection, a single strand or 2 strands of fiber that are going right into a switch, going right into the building. The way the networks have been designed, though, in historically for providers like us, is we make sure to build it so that it's not oversubscribed, so that everyone gets what they need when they need it. Yeah. So really, the difference is more so is when it hits the house and what devices are terminating that, whether it's a router that's provided by VNET Fiber, or it's your own personal device. We have a lot of customers who are, Speedhawks, and they put a Nighthawk in, or they want to put their own homegrown firewall in. Whereas with businesses, when Brian's building a network out or designing it for commercial or enterprise grade, is we're putting in enterprise firewalls, we're putting in enterprise switching, we're putting in, the best, the cabling to the desktops and faster desktops. So that all adds up to either a perceived speed difference or an actual speed difference. The majority of the time, though, when we are looking at a home where a home user is calling in and saying, hey, I'm not getting the speeds I paid for, we send a truck out there. We have tools at our disposal to be able to see if they're using our managed Wi-Fi, what the signal levels are. Is there a problem in the house? It'll actually say, Tony's iPhone has a low signal level. You might want to check on it, find out what's going on.
So I agree. I have to imagine it's one of the most popular, if not frustrating, points. Someone does a point in time speed check and is just gravitating to, well, if I'm paying for a gig, I should see a gig. That's not how that works.
Well, the problem is when you run a speed test, if there's anything going on your network,
that's right.
At the time you're doing the speed test, especially, think about it. If someone's streaming Amazon Prime, getting a 12 meg video stream, 15 meg video stream, it's not the Fortnites, it's not the gamers, it's not the kids on, Roblox or, all the things that my kids do right now. Is that doesn't add up, but it's the streaming video. And I know we were talking about that before, is those things add up. It creates congestion on your wireless network, which a lot of people don't realize that there's only so much bandwidth in the wireless network. If you're on 2.4 gigahertz, or you're on 5, or now we're going to Wi-Fi 7, which is introducing Wi-Fi 6. Usually it's just a bunch of different factors. And I always say it depends.
Oh, I love that you don't force the bundle. The games that some of these bells play, take the phone service, and then all of a sudden everything comes down, knowing full well that you're going to get marketing flooded, random calls, So I always hated that approach.
We run into that right now. I mean, our local cable company here, Spectrum, and they're always running some new promotion right now. I think they're offering internet for $30 a month if you take 2 phones, their TV service, and a partridge in a pear tree. Like, you take these things and now you get $30. But then if you cancel one of them, or you go, I don't want to use Spectrum for my voice. Now all of a sudden all your rates go up for everything. And there are people that call us all the time and say, hey, I like my T-Mobile, I like my Verizon. Are you going to make me do something with you guys so that I get a better rate? We're like, no, you just get your fiber. We don't want you don't have to do anything else with us.
I love it. I do. What was the limiting factor that if I ordered traditional cable service, that my download speed would be rated at, I'll say, a gig, and the upload was, 1K? Like, where's the logic there? Why was that always a thing?
It's the technology. It's the limitation on the technology.
That's what it is?
So when cable modems first came out, I'm probably dating myself definitely when this all started. I remember the modem return. Brian probably remembers that.
The surfboard.
Surfboard. So Adelphia was the first.
Oh my God, Adelphia. There's another blast.
They were the first cable company.
God, you guys are old.
Yeah, I know. The gray hair is showing. Adelphia was the first cable company here in the region. Erie didn't even have cable Roadrunner internet for years. Adelphia was ahead of the game. But the first round of cable modems was you got your download over the cable, but your upload went over a modem. You had to dial up. And it actually had a dial-up modem, and it told Adelphia what to send you down that pipe.
Yeah.
And it's because the technology was not there for upstream.
Yeah.
Your first experience with two-way in cable was pay-per-view. If you remember having pay-per-view, I mean, when I lived in the city in the cable company, if I wanted pay-per-view, you had to call a 1-800 number, put in some codes, know your parental PIN so you can get in there, and then they push the movie down to your cable box. Adelphia got ahead of it where it was two-way. You're on the cable box, say order now. That cable box would send a message up to them, turn it on for you. Until the technology and the infrastructure on the cable allowed you to send a decent amount of data upstream back to them, you couldn't do it. And when they created the technology for it, there was never enough upstream bandwidth back to the cable company than what you can get down. It's just never been designed that way. They're really trying to get as much out of this copper infrastructure as they can with new technology. So you may start seeing that get closer. I think until everyone goes fiber right to the curb and right to your house, it's not going to happen.
But why do we care as consumers? Why do we care about upstream? Like, what's so important? I mean, when I'm downloading movies or streaming, I can see gaming, and we're doing that.
It matters.
Yeah, that does.
When you shoot, you want the bullet to get there.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. That's upstream.
Yes, and having a robust pipe upstream for gaming keeps your latency low, which makes sure, if anything starts getting congested in my house, my kids start screaming, Dad, there's something going on with the internet, which it's usually not the internet. They just don't know. They're just not pointing and shooting right in Fortnite, or they're
that's the most common.
Tell their friends.
That's the most common online. Someone hit a lag switch, or did you feel that lag?
I think it's funny that my kids, until they figured out like I worked in internet, like they would blame it until I was like, you've got like the fastest, you've got fiber in your house. Stop trying to make excuses for your poor Fortnite play.
What is the right amount of bandwidth? Let me give you an example. So here I have now kids are growing up, and but rewind the clock a few years, we'd have 4 Xboxes, 4 headsets, 4 Xbox Live accounts. Everybody's playing Call of Duty. Wife is streaming Netflix, 4K content. And while they're playing Call of Duty, they have NBA League Pass going.
Mm-hmm.
It felt really good. Like, I didn't have any issues, but was gig too much? Like, is there anything, such a thing as too much? Like, what's the sweet spot for a very active tech home with a lot going on?
Well, if you would ask me this like 3 or 4 years ago when we were really evolving the fiber product, I would have said 300 megs is good enough for you, because we had a 100 meg package of 300 and we did gig. So we came right out of the gate offering gig in our fiber to the home package. Our new packages have a 2 gig option. We have people that'll call and say, I just want the fastest you can give me. I don't care how much it costs. I just want the fastest. And
usually
that's great.
The men request that? I'm assuming.
Usually. But from what we're seeing and the data that we pull down, and we've got some really smart people on our team that look at the bandwidth, see what, your heavy hitters are using versus your average consumers that are just surfing Netflix. But then you start adding in all these devices that are now reporting. You add in your streaming cameras. You were asking about upload. What is, if I want to watch my cameras, if I want to look at my Blink, if I want to look at my Ring doorbell, or I've created my own camera and I'm on my phone and I want to see what is going on, you need that upload, and you need it fast, because if something's going on or your kid calls you and says, Dad, I think someone's in the backyard, blah, blah, you do not want to be waiting for that stream to come up to say like, oh, something's going on here, I'm calling the police. Video is the biggest bandwidth, we call it on the ISP side, bandwidth buster, because if you're not prepared for it, it will break your network. And there's prioritization and things that, modern devices like our Wi-Fi can do. We can say anything that Tony wants to watch on any of his devices that are classified here, they get the priority no matter what happens. Everything else is secondary. You can do that. I anticipate in the next 2 to 3 years, it's going to be a gig. Like, everyone's just going to get a gig. The cable companies are going to offer everyone gig. We're going to offer everyone gig. And it's going to be whose gig is the best.
Sure.
Of course, it'll be ours.
Of course.
But, and then 2 gigs, 5 gigs. And there are providers out there offering 10. And, we go to a lot of trade shows. Calix is the company that powers our whole network in terms of what we put in the homes. And they say, like, we've done the math. There's nobody that could ever need that.
Knowing what I use internet for and not having any issues, I can't imagine why I would need more than the gig. But do you still recommend that if you can plug in, you should? Or is the new Wi-Fi standards?
No, I think it's fine. You should do what's comfortable for you to use. I mean, why would I plug in if I had a stream of something that was that important at that moment in time? Nothing beats being hardwired back to where it's going. But I mean, I envision an office that doesn't have wires, period, very soon. The Wi-Fi has become, powerful enough to be able to handle that. And I think your cameras are going to stay wired, but that's just so they can get power.
That's
right. That'll be the reason, so you can PoE to power those.
PoE.
Oh, Brad, you haven't invented the wireless power?
Yes, the wireless power. People ask me, do I need power? Well, I don't know. I mean, if you'd like it to turn on, that's kind of a thing. And I want to just kind of double back to something Brad was talking about with those cameras. But it wasn't that long ago that we were fine with a black and white image to kind of letting you kind of know what's going on in the backyard. Now, if it's not 8K, right, these cameras have
see license plate as it goes by 40 miles an hour.
But if, like, in our houses, we now have surveillance cameras that are far beyond what we used to use to take our actual still photos that were our memories forever, right? That this is a raccoon walking through the backyard. We want that. We want to see every hair on that thing. And it becomes so inexpensive. Well, that all comes at a cost on the other side, that bandwidth cost, that upload, that, I sort of equate it to how programmers, no offense to any of the programmers watching today, like how they become a little lazy because, processing got so good, memory became so inexpensive, and
that's a good point.
They became very bloated. If any of them had to code back in the 80s or 90s, like, you had to be so razor sharp with everything. All of that cost so much. You were so very careful. Now we just
and storage. It wasn't just a connection grab. How much?
No, but
how big that bucket is to grab.
Yeah, you'd had to be very surgical. Now it's like, we'll just throw it into the data lake. Who cares? Room, plenty of space. Bandwidth has sort of become the same thing. We're kind of great enablers that way. We're creating this phenomenal network with all this extra bandwidth. So that company that makes that 8K camera doesn't have to be worried so much about what the compression is. Do I buy that best codec to be able to really push it down? Or I'm like, whatever. They got plenty of bandwidth.
Who's even, sidebar, why is 8K a thing? Unless it's a 100-foot minimum screen that I'm 10 feet away from, the human eye can only figure out so much. Where I am kind of interested in 8K is virtual reality. If we can get to 8K per eye, maybe I won't be so nauseous, or, but I can't do it. I get
Well, just wait, because if they can do 16K, that'll be the next thing that's on there, just so they can say they are. I'm not saying you can see the difference.
Yeah.
I'm saying they can say that's what it is so they can pack more in.
Well, back to the guy thing, right?
Yep.
Like,
Bigger is better.
you offer 10 gig. Well, I want 10 gig. Well, what do you use it for? I don't give a shit. I want, give me the 10 gig. Yeah. All right. So how about getting fiber into the home? My perception is if you're in a neighborhood that has underground utility, it's clean, it's fast, it's quick, it's easy. What's is that reality or do you want poles?
We're split right now because we have many areas that are fed with utility poles, and we have a lot of areas, especially newer subdivisions that are being, spun up, or even some existing ones, especially in the suburbs, that are underground, and you don't have an option. The power company charges a huge premium for us to get on those poles.
On the poles?
On the poles.
Now, you could put your own poles up if you want, right?
You could, but we've run into this as well. We've been building in some areas in Erie right now where some of the telephone poles are very, very, very old. And as the last attacher, you are responsible for paying for that pole to replace it. Now, there's FCC rules that are out there now. There's a lot of things going on that say we should only pay for a proration of what the pole's age is. So if there's 80-year-old telephone poles, and there's maybe even older ones out there in some of these areas.
For real?
For real.
How do they not rot right through to the end?
They are still there.
Wow.
I've seen some real interesting ones that
wood ones. That's crazy to me.
That we're supposed to not pay for them. That hasn't caught up yet with the local provider. So we could be going down a road and go, this is all good. Oh, nope. The power company says that pole's $50,000 and for those 4 homes there.
Are you making up a number?
No, I've actually
crazy.
I've actually got built
but as your own utility, you can just be like, put our own pole.
So we've done that. We've put poles where we go across the street, but we're also, we also, care about the aesthetics and what people have to deal with in a community.
Yeah.
So that if all of your telephone poles are going down one side of the street, and all of a sudden now we start setting poles all down another side of someone's lawn that maybe has lived there for 40 years, has never had a telephone pole in their front lawn. Yes, we're a utility. We have the right to do it, and we have done it. And we will do it where it makes sense and where it's our only option. And we get the phone calls, and then we get the phone calls from the city, and we get the phone calls from the municipalities or whatever saying, why are you doing this? And generally when we explain it, they're like, okay, I get it. But in the underground areas, that becomes, it's a whole other ball of wax.
And I've had 2 stories, not necessarily for VNET, but 25,000 homes. I'm sure you've experienced this. So I'll say it from a consumer's perspective, but I'm going to bitch at the complainers because you're bringing gig fiber into the home, and it's a tremendous service and benefit, cost advantage compared to blah, blah, blah. List out the benefits. So why bitch and complain if I accidentally sever an invisible fence that you, consumer, signed and said you don't have it, or B, the lawn doesn't quite look the same, or you took out a bush that's been there, it's so petty to me, and the grass will grow back, the bush can be replanted. Invisible fence, I don't know what you do there if they signed off saying that it didn't exist, but yet it did. I don't know. How do you guys manage?
And that happens. And if it's an invisible fence they don't let us know about and we cut it, we'll either fix it or we generally pay someone to fix it. We are good stewards of the areas that we're going in. We know not everyone is going to get VNET. Some will wait to see how everything else goes, how their neighbors like it, how, the word of mouth. So This is why going into a neighborhood, if we are disturbing things, we're fixing them up, we're doing right by those homes, even if we had nothing to do with it. Sometimes we get the phone calls where, hey, you chipped my driveway. Well, we weren't even really near it, but you know what? We could have. So if it makes sense for us to do repairs or patch some, do some blacktop patching here or fix a brick that got out of the way, we'll do that. But the other thing too is, you mentioned the speeds and you mentioned the features of fiber. Joel will tell you this too, and if we're sitting here having this conversation, is we're providing choice. We're providing another option. And when we go into a neighborhood, whether you pick VNET or not, we just gave you a rate cut because The minute Spectrum or Verizon or Comcast or Brightspeed, any of those ones that are out there, find out that we're offering service, they update their computers, and all of a sudden now you can get a lower price.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing that when we're on the phone with people and they're trying to cancel their service, that the incumbent gives them such a hard time to cancel, and they throw everything at them. And you can get this rate, and we'll give you this for 6 months free. People will say, I don't want it. Because if you really cared about me as a customer, you would have given me a better rate a year ago or 2 years ago. And they're like,
if you're a new customer, you're threatening to leave, all of a sudden there's options galore.
So
how about give it to me out of the gate?
Our attrition rate on people who've signed up for us to go over is less than 1% right now.
Yeah.
And they can throw whatever deal, and it's frustrating because we actually, the door-to-door salespeople that come in my neighborhood, dude, you've been here 6 times. I feel really bad because I'm never going to go there. One, because I work for the company that you're trying to take everything back from. And he's like, that explains why no one is switching. No one is going back. Now, of course, I'm the tech support for the neighborhood when there's a fiber, if there's an issue. But
you slippery bitch.
But he said, I can't get anyone back. I just can't.
Yeah.
And they move on to other areas. So
happy people don't leave companies. Happy people don't leave service providers.
Exactly.
And if I'm going to my favorite steakhouse, I'm okay to pay a little bit more if I know exactly what I'm getting. I mean, exclusive price shoppers, that's not the deal.
And you're not, and the ones who are going to be the price shoppers, I go back to the Dish Network DirecTV days. Back, I had the same thing. I had the 2 different satellite providers, and they'd run a 2-year promo. And then when that promo is over, you go back to Dish, and when that promo is over, you go to DirecTV. If you're that type of consumer that you're just going to go back and forth between the different deals, one, we don't offer any promotions. We give you the price that's for that area. That's the price.
Yeah.
That's not the company. Those aren't the people that we're looking to find.
Is that why I see 2 satellite dishes on homes? Because they're playing the bounce game?
Yeah.
I thought so.
That's what we used to do. I mean,
I did the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
TV is the same no matter where it comes from. Right?
You just move that coax. You get the new box, move that coax cable. Yeah.
All right. So, Brian, any thoughts on the fiber before we pivot?
Just to circle all the way back to those business customers, I think it's really important when you're looking at a business fiber agreement is to understand what my upload looks like, what my needs are going to be, and do we want to talk about redundancy at all in that plant? I do think it's important to understand that if my business relies on fiber, and VNET is super reliable, like 5 nines, uptime, all of those things, I will still sell you somebody else's internet too, coming in a different direction if you can't be down. Because if your business relies so heavily on it, you're a day trader and, minutes matter.
Yeah.
I can't get product out if we moved all of our stuff to cloud services.
That's great to hear because yes, so you're truly a partner to businesses. You're not a transaction. You're not a vendor. But you mentioned redundancy. So if I am head of IT or my own business owner and I want a redundant connection, so a couple of thoughts come to mind. You have to do a different carrier. Now, you'll debunk these or affirm them. Different carrier, different point of entry in the building. Maybe just different technology altogether, one cable, one fiber. But do all roads meet together at some point?
Let me take this one to start. So not really. I mean, they do it maybe at the end. Like
with the converged roads,
where you're trying to get to.
If Ashburn goes offline and it's one of your Microsoft data centers, there's nothing.
If Office 365 is down, it's not going to matter how many connections you have to get back. Okay, so let's get that out of the way. Different providers, probably important because if you've got your cable modem from the same place that you have your fiber connection from, they probably have the same routers on the backside. So if somebody made a router config change, it's a problem. It's probably going to be a problem for both your connections where they might be getting their backhaul service from the same place. So that could be problematic. So you're good to think if I have desperate providers, that's going to be good. Different points of entry, sure, that's important. I would even like to know how they get to me, because if one comes in the front and one comes in the side, but they both come in 2 poles down the street, It's not really that much different. It might stop the truck from hooking one in the driveway, but that's about it.
Yeah.
But if I have one that comes in the back and one that comes in the front, and the one that comes in the front comes from the east, and the one that comes in the back comes from the west on two different pole lines, that's a much better chance that, the sleepy driver on the road doesn't just take out all of my services. Not every business has that luxury to have pole lines in the back and pole lines in the front,
and it's not so much cost; it's just your service options in the area.
You're just in a spot where you're down the road, and they only come in one way. If all of the fiber, if Verizon comes this way and Spectrum comes this way and VNET comes this way, if they're all coming up the street and at the corner, the cement truck makes a hard left and takes out that pole on the corner, everyone's out of luck. Doesn't matter how many different ones
you are, but I almost think, unless you're some rural, remote area, that exact scenario described tells me that's a main artery. A lot of business rely on that. It's going to get priority, right?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, it's usually more likely that a trunk line down a main road, something happens to that.
Okay.
Someone crashes in the pole, takes a fiber line out, which could take out 2, 3, 4, 5 providers. You don't know, because there's a lot of fiber that is sold, resold, bundled, traded, swapped all over the place. And to Brian's point is, just because they come in 2 different entrances doesn't mean that they're not going to the same place. In a market like Erie, there are a lot of providers, but a lot of those providers use a few number of transport providers to get in and out of Erie. So from our standpoint as an ISP, we have to go very deep and go, okay, how do each of these routes get us out of Erie? Because if we lose, 200 gig lines that are on the same provider, but this one's Cogent, this one is Lumen, this one is Zayo, we could lose 2 or 3 backbones. We have to make sure we are completely route diverse. We are not going the same paths, down the same poles, in the same areas. So for a business that's looking for redundancy, a company like ours comes in and asks those questions, like all the ones that Brian just went down. You can bring in, a reseller who's trying to sell multiple providers and say, I want redundancy. They're going to be like, okay, well, we'll give you a Verizon line and we'll give you a Zayo, or we'll give you this one, Cogent. Well, we've run into this where they think they have 2 different providers. They pay 2 different bills, but they both go back to the same fiber provider and take them really to the same place. And until there's a fiber cut, you don't find out the hard way.
What's even funnier is sometimes they'll even be on the same piece of hardware in the room. They're like, I got different providers. Yep. I'm in there doing
the same switch.
I'm like, well, they're both going into that.
Yeah.
But how could that be different? There's one fiber coming into the building that they've sold multiple different connections up. So they do get redundancy from carrier, but not from physical problem.
See?
In that case. So
you get under the hood.
Yeah.
That's good. Thanks again for joining us today. I really appreciate the insights when it comes to speed to the home.
Absolutely.
Fiber revolution. You exposing your age, talking about dial-up modems.
Yeah.
I know nothing of what he speaks. But no, this was good because, again, I always come out smarter when I'm in the room with the 2 of you. So until next time, thanks.